cut lock on the door.
Hey, sir.
I see him.
What's up, you guys? Welcome back to Southern Draw Law. My name is James White, criminal defense attorney, former prosecutor, former police officer. At the beginning of this year, we reported extensively on the case of Johnny Bowman, an Alabama business owner who was shot by his local police department when they invited themselves into his private business at 3 o'clock in the morning to investigate what they said was a suspected burglary. As a result, there was a shootout, the case was submitted to the grand jury, and no one was indicted. That forced the Semmes, Alabama Police Department to release the body cam, and to the surprise of absolutely no one, the story didn't exactly unfold the way they initially said it did. So what I want to do, the Fox News 10 team did a fantastic initial episode on this investigation, so I just want to play their version of it. So we're going to get into the video, and we're going to talk about all the legal implications, but before we do that, I need to tell you about the sponsor of today's video, Chapter. If you've watched this channel for any length of time at all, you've probably noticed a recurring theme. Incentives matter, and most importantly, incentivizing bad behavior almost always leads to bad outcomes, and Medicare's no exception. People think, it's 2026 and all this information's at my fingertips, except that much of the information at their fingertips is being controlled by the people with the bad incentives. So they get misled by mailers and advertisements and incomplete information and agents who only show them the plans that pay the highest commission. And that's why I'm proud to have partnered with Chapter. They offer their support for absolutely free. Chapter's the only national Medicare advisor that compares every single Medicare plan available. And that's not the only difference. Their advisors are licensed, independent, and salaried, which means that they don't make more money by steering you toward one plan over another. Instead, they look at your doctors, your prescriptions, and your healthcare needs, and they help you find the best plan for you. And if you're already on the best plan, they'll tell you that too. Last year alone, seniors who found new plans through Chapter saved an average of $1,100 on healthcare costs. So don't risk losing out on potential savings when there are resources like Chapter there to help you for free. Call Chapter today at 424-389-2979. Have one conversation with a real person. See if it makes a difference. Again, that's 424-389-2979. Now, let's get back to the video.
It has been more than 6 months since a Semmes business owner was shot by police inside his own shop in the middle of the night.
Fox 10 News has covered this story from day one, and tonight, after months of a legal back and forth, we've obtained the full 90-minute body camera video of that encounter. In his first television interview about the shooting, the mayor of Semmes, Brandon Van Hook, is speaking out, and Johnny Bowman Jr.'s attorney is responding. Our Natalie Williamson has been on this story since the beginning and joins us now with part one of her investigation. Natalie.
Lenise and Cameron, it was just after 3 in the morning on January 4th when 2 Semmes police officers walked into Bowman's Auto Air on Moffett Road, investigating a possible burglary. It set off a chain of events that left business owner Johnny Bowman Jr. shot 5 times and sparked a month-long fight to get this video. And tonight we're taking you through the intense moments before, during, and after the shootout. Viewer discretion advised. Bullets flying inside Bowman's Auto Air. In a matter of seconds, business owner Johnny Bowman Jr. is shot 5 times, and a Semmes officer grazed by a bullet. Just minutes before that gunfire, Semmes police officers Austin Collier and Brandon Murphy pulled up to the business on Moffett Road. Police say Collier's body cam was not working. This video is from Murphy's body-worn camera. The video shows Collier is already at the entrance when Murphy walks up to an open door. Police say the door was open when they arrived, and in the video you can hear Collier say, "Cut lock," and point down, but a cut padlock is never visible in the video.
Cut lock on the door.
Bowman's attorney, Brian Comer, who filed a federal civil rights lawsuit against the officers, says that raises serious questions.
We don't know what was actually encountered by Officer Collier when he got to the door, and that's part of what we hope to find out in discovery.
Those things are battery operated, so unfortunately they don't last forever, and his may have, it may have died, it may have been operating properly, But I guarantee if it was operating properly, he'd been the first one to have it on.
Chief Todd Friend said there had been reports of burglaries in the area that night.
Police department, make yourself known.
The officers enter, announcing their presence as they move through the darkened building. One officer would later say they announced themselves 10 to 12 times. We counted at least 5 times.
Police department, make yourself known.
Police department, make yourself known. Police department, make yourself known. Police department, sir, can you come up and step to the door?
Inside, they find a camper trailer. What they don't know is that the owner of this 31-year-old business is asleep inside it.
I see the cat. I don't see nobody in there. I see him. Got an oxygen mask or something on his face.
It was clear he was asleep. The lights were off. You can see that in the video. In fact, one of the officers, I believe it was Officer Murphy, noted that he was wearing a CPAP or an oxygen mask. So he did have every right to be there. He didn't violate any law by sleeping there. And again, he wasn't doing anything wrong. He was asleep in his business.
Colmer says the officers never should have entered the business in the first place.
The police created this situation. The police, by going into the business, not calling his phone number, that's again posted in huge numbers outside, by not doing other things that could have de-escalated that, they're the ones who created this hazardous situation.
Semmes Mayor Brandon Van Hook sees it differently. In his first television interview about the shooting, he says officers were doing exactly what they were trained to do.
We have what we call proactive patrolling. And that means if we have businesses, we want an officer to stop by and my doors for open and see what's going on. No officer at 3 o'clock in the morning is going to think that somebody is sleeping in a business with the door wide open.
What's amazing to me about this mayor is that this dude has been nowhere to be found. Nobody's been able to pin him down for an interview. Remember that the city attorney came out and said, we're not supposed to be talking about this secret subpoena, and borderline committed a criminal offense by doing so. The biggest problems that have existed in this case have all been caused by the city of Semmes, Alabama. This is a perfect example of a city that wants you to believe things the way they want to tell the story, and then they completely go hide somewhere when you start asking tough questions. And so this mayor is just clueless. All he wants to, he has no idea how police officers are trained. He's sitting there talking about what his expectations are as the leader of the city and what the policy expectations are for the police department. And he's conflating that with police officer training as it relates to clearing buildings. Those are not even remotely the same thing. What you expect of your police officers as far as vigilant, proactive patrol, that has nothing to do with police training, tactical training for clearing buildings and things like that. So to suggest that these officers were doing exactly what they were trained to do is completely disconnected from any factual understanding about what happened that night or what the police officers are trained to do as far as tactics go.
In here.
The body camera video shows the officers moving toward the camper. You can see Collier holstering his weapon. Murphy says he did the same.
Hey, sir.
I see him.
Then a light comes on inside the trailer.
Got an oxygen mask or something on his face. Yeah. Police department, sir, can you come up and step to the door?
Seconds later, the video shows Bowman opening the door, holding a gun that's pointed up, and the shooting begins. The video shows Officer Murphy immediately retreating out a side door. At 3:11, Murphy says he thinks he may have been shot.
33 just advising I can't tell, I may be shot in the back.
At 3:21, he says he thinks he's been clipped.
I think he just clipped me.
By 3:23, it's confirmed. A flesh wound.
Flesh wound.
Murphy tells fellow officers he'd rather stay on security than get medical help.
He did what he was trained to do. He's there to protect and serve. You know, our mission statement is to protect the lives and the property of everyone in Semmes. We held up a flashlight and a weapon for 20 minutes.
One of the biggest questions, who fired first? Semmes police say Bowman came out shooting. Bowman told 911 operators the officers fired first and that he never heard them identify themselves. Listen to what Officer Murphy says on the body camera after the shooting.
I mean, my guard was down 100%. Seeing him slowly get up, like I thought he acknowledged us.
We've watched this video multiple times, even in slow motion. It is impossible for us to determine who pulled the trigger first.
It's our position that the police officers did shoot first, and I personally think that the video supports that, and that's one of the facts that we're going to get to the bottom of to the extent we can.
Our guy said in the video, as you stated already, that his guns were holstered already. Even you just stated that. You can slow down the video and see a shot where it appears the shot's coming from the door of the trailer. Every police department across this nation is taught to treat every gun like it's loaded.
Now, as it relates to what the officers were doing right directly before Mr. Bowman opened the door and pointed the gun to him, this is where their legal position and their reasoning gets really complicated. Because if you remember, the mayor went to great lengths to explain how even you said they had holstered their weapons. And so his intention in doing this interview is to try to provide a justification for what these guys did. And he thinks that he's saying, by illustrating the fact that the officers put their guns away, that meant that it was impossible for the officers to have fired first. What he doesn't understand is what it actually shows that the officers put their guns away is that to the extent that there was ever a lawful basis for them to be inside the property, which I would argue there was not one, but let's say that for a second you said, okay, they at least were reasonable in going inside the business and clearing it. But every part of the record that we can see now suggests that the clearing was over. Their own language suggests that the clearing was over. The officer said, my guard was completely down. I can see him. He's coming to the door. He's got an oxygen mask. Look, you see, this is the guy. He's wearing an oxygen mask. He's asleep. He's coming to the door. There's a cat. Nobody's alarmed. And the officers put their guns down. And in that moment, their exigency, to the extent that it ever existed, is over with. Whatever point the mayor thinks he's trying to make about them holstering their weapons, therefore it's impossible for them to have shot first, one is stupid in light of the fact that we just heard them pop off like 13 to 15 rounds. So even if they didn't shoot first, they shot most and they shot immediately. And his point was negated by how quickly they did return fire. So he should have never tried to make that point. That was stupid, but it just simply doesn't prove what he thinks it proves. If you know anybody that's got CPAP mask on, that machine is very loud. He very likely could not have heard all the times that they were saying police, whatever. But the point is, you're getting a view into the officer's mindset when the officer says, my guard was down. I thought he acknowledged us. So this was transitioning from I thought somebody broke into this place to, okay, I get it. It's just the homeowner. And now he recognizes us. So your reasons for being in there to begin with are now gone. And that's going to be a really interesting thing for the courts to wrestle with as far as what is reasonable here. You can tell by this mayor's statements that he just believes in this fairy tale. There is no part of this video, I've slowed it down frame by frame, where you can see Mr. Bowman firing a shot. So the mayor believes that's what happened. And that's the problem, because they aren't actually committed to transparency, because if they were, we wouldn't have had to have a legal battle for them to release the body cam. But on top of that, they also are responsible for how this thing got framed in the first place. And it actually, if you think about it, follows a pattern of how the Semmes, Alabama Police Department dealt with this issue to begin with. I'll remind you of this initial news report that, again, they were responsible for giving to the news.
Another local police officer shot, this one in Semmes, in a shootout with a suspect.
WKRG News 5's Christina J. Harris joins us in the studio now. And Christina, the police chief told you what police believe led to this shooting.
Semmes police say the owner of a local business barricaded himself inside a camper on the property, then fired shots at police. Bowman's Auto Air on Moffett Road is now the center of a shooting investigation that left one officer and a man with gunshot wounds.
We've had a couple of dealings with Mr. Bowman, but I know some of the officers have mentioned that they have run across him and talked to him
Police say it happened around 3 o'clock Sunday morning. The patrol officer noticed a door open at the business, prompting him to go inside to investigate.
They had already cleared the rest of the building and they were going to clear the camper. They were going to make sure that there was no one inside of the camper or whatever hiding or whatnot that may have broken into the business.
That's when police say the owner, Johnny Bowman Jr., began shooting at them. He was shot 5 times in the crossfire, and an officer hit once in the back is expected to be okay. Chief Friend says they are not sure why Bowman shot at the officers.
You announce who you are as you enter the building, so things like this don't happen.
Semmes Police says it took several hours of negotiations, along with the help of the Mobile County Sheriff's Office Tactical Response Unit, to get the situation under control. Now, Bowman remains in the hospital tonight. Now, once he's released, he will likely face charges. Live in the studio, I'm Christina J. Harris, WKRG News 5.
This thing was originally framed by the Semmes, Alabama Police Department so that nobody would ask any questions. And then when people start pushing back and asking, well, wait a minute, then they just disappear. They're not available to answer questions. The mayor, for the first time, 7 months later, has the time and energy to do an interview with the news station now that the body cam's out, and now there's a PR war going on about who is right and who is wrong. So again, the Semmes Police Department has seemingly a pattern of creating a dynamic and then responding to it in the worst possible way and then claiming that their response is reasonable when that's not actually what happened. Now, where this gets interesting legally is Barnes versus Felix was decided in May of last year. And Barnes versus Felix, a lot of people get this confused. Barnes versus Felix made no decision on the merits of the case. If you're not familiar with Barnes versus Felix, Ashton Barnes got stopped by a Texas constable in Harris County, Texas, for unpaid toll violations. Barnes, it's a long story, but Barnes appears that he's going to take off. The deputy jumps on the inside open door of Barnes's vehicle and finds himself sort of being propelled down the highway and decides to fire into the cab, killing Barnes. So the question was, do we look at everything up to the shooting, like why the officer jumped on the side of the car in the first place, whether or not deadly force was authorized for toll violations or fleeing in a vehicle or whatever? Do we look at all that, or do we isolate this down to the moment where Felix is standing on Ashton Barnes's open door and rocker panel of the car, and we ask the question, in that moment, was it reasonable for Felix to fear for his life? And so, of course, they had this thing called moment of threat doctrine in the Fifth Circuit. And so the whole point of Barnes versus Felix was to say, no, the moment of threat doctrine is too narrow. So that's what the Supreme Court decided. They didn't decide anything about the merits of the Barnes versus Felix case. All they did was remand it back to the Fifth Circuit. And the problem is, we will probably never get an actual decision on the merits of Barnes versus Felix because the Fifth Circuit wrote a scathing opinion asking the Supreme Court to intervene. And it should have been obvious to Harris County how the Fifth Circuit would have ruled if it had the opportunity to rule based on the totality of the circumstances. So more than likely, Harris County will probably settle with the Barnes family, and we will never actually get a decision from the courts on the merits of that case. But this might be one of the first cases that is poised to have an enormous Fourth Amendment ruling based on the Barnes versus Felix holding, because it's going to say, was it reasonable for them to be there in the first place? And so the question really is, do the police have the authority to go onto private property, specifically commercial property, and investigate and find exigency there? Because if you think about it, the case that gave us the implied license language, that was Jardines. It was out of Florida. It was a Supreme Court case. And it said essentially that there's an implied license for police to come up, knock on your door, stand on your front porch, whatever, have a consensual conversation with you. There's an implied license. And the way that you can override that, and you've seen a lot of people do it in the interim, is to put out no trespassing signs. We revoke the implied license. Police officers are not welcome to come knock on our door and engage in consensual encounters. If you put those up, the idea is that you're putting the police on notice that you're revoking the implied license. But if you actually get into the subtext of the opinion in Jardines, you realize that this implied license, as Justice Scalia described it, exists because of social norms surrounding what people do at regular people's houses. So people come up and they deliver religious pamphlets. The Jehovah's Witnesses knock on your door. Local salesmen come knock on your door and try to offer you encyclopedias or improvements to your home, maybe gutters or insect treatment or something like that. The whole idea is that in our society, these things are normal. And so it should be normal for a police officer to just walk up to your door and have a conversation. Here's the issue. Jardines doesn't really apply to this situation because it's not normal to go to a commercial business at 3 o'clock in the morning. You're not doing an inspection. You're not involved in anything up to the city. So then it becomes a question of, did you ever have the authority to step foot on this property in the first place? And we know that that's an issue because if you'll think about all the different videos you've seen on the internet where an officer wants to get somebody trespassed from property, the person's committing contempt of cop. You'll see these guys walk into gas stations, walk into grocery stores, walk into these private businesses, and they will ask for authority from the private business owner on commercial properties to trespass a person because they don't like the way they were treated by the person. But they know, and their behavior acknowledges in that moment, that they don't actually have the authority to trespass somebody from the property, right? So that is a universal concept. Property rights, they give what's called a bundle of sticks. And one of the things that comes along in the bundle of sticks is the right to exclude other people from the property. So if you go around like places like Broward County, I was down in Broward County on vacation in January when this story broke. And I even think that I put up a picture of a sign that was in the parking lot of the hotel. And it was the Broward County Sheriff's Office saying, we have permission from this property owner to trespass people from this property. Now, I don't know how they do it in Semmes, Alabama, but what's going to be fleshed out in the discovery process is if Semmes, Alabama has some process to gain authority from these private business owners in order to trespass people away from the property. Because if, for instance, Semmes, Alabama has a process like that and all the businesses around have allowed them to do it, but Bowman Auto and Air said no, then that means that Bowman Auto and Air retained the sole right to exclude people from the property, which means that there was no license for the police to be there in the first place. And so it seems like it's going to be like this quiet little case in small town Alabama, but it is poised to be one of the most monumental Fourth Amendment decisions in modern Fourth Amendment jurisprudence. And I, for one, am here for it. I want to know what the appellate courts are going to say about how Jardines implied license, how exigency, how all these things play into the totality of the circumstances. In order for exigency to attach, they have to be there lawfully. It's just a fundamental element of exigent circumstances. They have to be doing something they're lawfully allowed to do in order for you to be able to get exigent circumstances. And so it's going to be interesting how this case is ultimately decided. Anyway, those are my thoughts on it, guys. If you've made it to the end of this video, I really appreciate you sticking it out. I hope you got something from it. It really does mean a lot if you take the time to watch the entire video. It's the one way you can really help the channel grow without having to spend any money. You don't have to do anything except watch. And obviously, I'd appreciate it if you subscribe, but just being here for it is enough for me. So I'd like to invite you to check us out on all the socials. I'll put up a QR code here for you to scan with your phone. That will take you to the Linktree site where you can check us out on YouTube, Facebook, TikTok, and Substack. Hope to see you on one of those platforms in the very near future. Until I see you again, take care. Always film your interactions with the police and keep your evidence to yourself.